If you're into One Piece and or trading card games, you're probably aware of the upcoming Bandai One Piece TCG, getting a pre-release in the States later this month and a full release later this year. But what might have been lost at time is that it's not the first One Piece card game, maybe not even the second or third depending on how you're counting. Try looking up One Piece TCG on Google, then stick this handy parameter in your keyword search to filter out new results, and you're going to find all manner of unique card layouts from different points in One Piece's lifecycle. Much like any other multimedia anime franchise, One Piece TCG's got their start in Bandai's card-ass machines, a sort of universal cross-franchise card distribution system and testing ground for intellectual properties that may be popular enough to justify their own unique card game. One Piece was one of them, and although there is still distribution of One Piece cards under the card-ass branding in Japan today, there was a brief stint in the mid-2000s where it got its own game, the One Piece collectible card game. In Japan it lasted for 3 years and 17 expansions. In the United States, it lived and died within 1 year and received just 1 expansion. Some other non-Japanese territories fared a little better than the US, but if you're only working with English, then the breadth of your One Piece CCG experience is going to be within the original set, One Piece The Journey Begins, or its single Alabasta-themed expansion, One Piece Passage to the Grand Line. But short life be damned, because arguably the greatest beauty of physical TCGs is their ability to be played even after their print run. If you don't mind buying unsealed product and don't care about One Piece's Charizard equivalents, you can get bulk of this game pretty cheap off of eBay. That's exactly what I did, buying enough to sample multiple deck archetypes. After an extended weekend of rigorous play, thanks again Matt, I've got a good pulse on the flow of the game. What did it do well? What did it do poorly, and what makes it stand out? Before we can get into that, we need to know how it works. In One Piece the collectible card game, there are 2 types of cards, characters and techniques. Characters have a few key attributes: their name, their health, which is designated by the number of log poses on the top left, and interestingly not 1 but 2 offensive statistics: power, which determines their likelihood to win a battle, and damage, which determines how much hurt will get output once that battle is won. Each card is also aligned to one of 5 factions: Luffy Pirates, Strongman, Citizen, Navy, or Enemy Forces, which is a catch-all for any pirate who is in a straw hat. Each card also has a title in the top banner, which is important to distinguish from their name because many cards will share a name but not a title. There are like half a dozen different Luffys, for example. Which matters because of our second card type, techniques. Techniques are pretty simple. You play them and they do something. They are the spell or magic card equivalent. But what's interesting is how you pay for them, or rather, how you don't. The One Piece CCG does not use a resource system. Instead, the use of techniques are gated by different prerequisites. For starters, every technique has a user. The simplest techniques can be used by anyone, but more often than not, the technique will demand a character with a particular name in play to be used. Additionally, there's a requirements parameter, sometimes demanding a particular board state or hand size or some other qualification to be met. The end result, at least in theory, is that the strength of a technique is inversely proportional to how easy it is to get onto the field. Doesn't work like that all the time in practice, but the idea is cool. But why play the cards? What's the win condition? Well, One Piece has 3 of them. The first is one it shares with many other card games. Running out of cards in your deck is an instant loss, no questions asked. The other 2 are more One Piece specific. You lose when your captain dies. Your captain, rather than being a unique card type in its own right, is just a character card that you've designated to be the captain from your opening hand. Or you can just homebrew it and play whatever captain you want, opening hand be damned. You place them right in the center of the field, occupying the middle of 3 slots. You also lose if enough comrades die. What's a comrade? Again, not a particular card type, just the character cards that aren't your captain. They get played to the left or right of your captain respectively. Dying is the wrong word though, that doesn't fit with the flavor. When you deplete an enemy comrade's health to 0, you actually capture them, bringing them into this wanted section over to the side so you can turn them in for their bounty. This is effectively your score tracker. When you've captured enemy comrades whose health totals or exceeds 6, you win the game. To start the game, you place 6 cards from the top of your deck into your log area. then draw 7 cards from your deck. Your deck is actually referred to as the treasure chest in all the documentation. Of the 7 cards you've drawn, you can put up to 3 character cards in play. These will be your captain and starting comrades, but their health total cannot exceed 6. That's what the 6 log cards we drew earlier were. That's the health we will be distributing to our comrades and captain. Once both players have set up their initial board based on their starting hands, the game can begin. Each turn you get a free draw at the start. Then you have 3 action points you can spend doing one of the following actions. Draw an additional card. You must have less than 5 cards in your hand to perform this action. Log a card, which means placing the top card on your deck into your log zone. Play a comrade, which necessitates you having enough logs in your log zone to use as their health, or declaring battle with one of your characters. Battling is where the meat and potatoes of the game comes through. There's a positional element to it. You can only attack the captain if they have an opening on either side. If they're defended by a comrade, you have to go through them first. Whoever has the higher power wins, and deals their damage to the opposer. But this is where your techniques come into play, because the battle isn't instantaneous but instead allows both players to play whatever techniques they meet the criteria for. The attacker can play a technique, then the defender can play one, then the attacker again, then the defender again, repeat infinitely until both players say they don't want to play any more cards. You can even play character cards during this battle, which doesn't have them permanently staying on the field but instead has them temporarily reinforce whoever is battling, giving a plus 100 power bonus and enabling the use of their technique cards. For example, playing this Chu character card as a reinforcement allows me to then use his technique card even though he isn't the one battling. After the battle, the damage resolves. All the technique cards and characters used as reinforcements get sent to the ocean, that's the graveyard by the way, and any comrade whose health drops to 0 gets captured by your opponent. Remember how the logs of health were being represented by cards from our deck? Anytime a unit takes damage, you actually draw those logs from them, reducing the amount of logs they have remaining, but also increasing your resources simultaneously. This built-in comeback mechanic is something One Piece has Duel Masters to thank for, which visualizes your cards as shields in front of you that can be drawn when you take damage. But the One Piece CCG spin on this is that the shields, or logs in our case, are localized to individual units rather than being tied to the player itself. Once you've finished taking the 3 actions allowed within your turn, you must get your hand to 4 cards before your turn is formally over, whether that means discarding your excess or drawing your deficit. And that's really the game. Each player alternates taking turns and performing their actions until one of the 3 win conditions is met. Games can go really fast. All it takes is one open flank and a squishy captain can be sunk quickly. You'd also be surprised at how frequently the decking out win condition can sneak up on you. This game has an interesting relationship with card advantage. I've played games that allow you to draw lots of cards, but that's usually other cards enabling that behavior. Between the end of turn refuel and the fact that additional card draw is an action you can take within your turn, you're never starved for resources here. Heavy card draw is embedded into the game at a systems level, and mastering that without overdoing it felt like one of the game's principal skills. Your deck is only 32 cards, and when you add that to the fact that a good chunk of those are going to be used for logging, that empty deck lose condition will be a present threat. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it helped create urgency and instill some proactive behaviors, which definitely contributes to these short game durations the One Piece CCG tends to trend towards. I like the One Piece CCG. It's a totally serviceable gameplay system that brings a few unique spins to traditional card game battling, such as its intimate 3-on-3 fights, its twist on the Duel Master shield system, and the back and forth one-upsmanship of battles having you escalate your power higher and higher. There's even a little One Piece spin in the packaging of the product itself. Some booster packs would contain pieces of a treasure map which, when collected with other corresponding map pieces, would contain a larger image of X marking the spot. If you sent in a completed map to Bandai, you would get an oversized holo promo card. Neat. But that's not to say that its short life cycle was completely unwarranted. I think there are a few key drawbacks that may have contributed to its eventual demise. For starters, the presentation leans really heavily on anime screen grabs to make up the majority of its technique card artwork. Thankfully, character cards get unique posed art, but they suffer in their own way. Unfortunately, this CCG was produced during the 4Kids dubbing of One Piece, meaning that Zoro is Zolo, Ace is Trace, and Smoker is Chaser. From a gameplay perspective, the largest inhibitor of fun for me were the soft deck building restrictions that come from techniques being married to their user. Your 32 card deck isn't going to be 32 different decisions, but instead 3 to 5 key ones, where you are essentially picking which pirates you want to use, and their corresponding techniques being more or less of a compulsory addition. That's on top of trying to meet the right faction balance. Comrades and captains can only be reinforced by cards of the same faction, with the exception of citizens. They're your wild cards, and can reinforce as well as be reinforced by any faction. I think that both of these factors combined lead to a lot of rigidity in terms of how decks are built and played, leading the deck construction feeling like it kind of constructs itself. And that's not even discussing the balance implications of having cards explicitly tied to other cards that have their name on it. I asked Robbie what he thought about the game and its decline, and he cited techniques as a pitfall, with some captains being effectively unplayable because they're stapled to bad techniques. A fault exacerbated by the fact that they may have eventually gotten support in sets that never made it stateside. Oh yeah, I should probably talk about Robbie. When I was scouring eBay looking for the One Piece CCG, my goals were with playing in mind, not collecting. Unsealed product is perfect for this, and I eventually stumbled across Robbie's store, which sold a particular type of unsealed product. Rather than just selling the bulk as bulk, he's organized the cards into decks with play and balance in mind, and was selling those decks separately. When I purchased a handful, he gave me tips on how to pilot them, let me know which decks were power creeped because they came from the second set, as well as making himself available for any questions I had about the game. He even has tutorial videos showcasing the game and how it's played on his YouTube channel dating back over half a decade. He does definitely sell full collections and rare foils too. I have no idea how he came across so much product, but I do know that based on his dedication to making these custom decks and his eagerness to speak about them, that he's passionate about the game, beyond just its ability to be stored in a binder, and I found that inspiring. He's out here doing his part in keeping this game alive, and making it simple and playable at least for as long as his product reserves last. You know, this video was meant to be the first video in a series called Return from Graveyard, where I would go back and play old dead card games and see how they held up. I even had this awesome thumbnail whipped up by an artist on Fiverr with this slick graveyard aesthetic. But I started second guessing this framing as time passed. Is it not a little presumptuous to call this game dead? I mean, sure it is in the sense that we conventionally think of a product being dead, but that definitely didn't stop me from committing last weekend to playing it, did it? I started thinking very philosophically about it, and I think it reminded me of something. When does a card game die, Chopper? When it receives its final expansion? No. When your local game store no longer carries it? No. When it stops getting printed? No. A card game dies when it is forgotten. And maybe thanks to folks like Robbie who share their passion for the game and make it accessible, and maybe even thanks to folks like you for watching videos on this CCG from nearly 2 decades ago, maybe it's being kept alive in its own small way.